And possibly, Bill, you could explain or trace your development somewhat to show how you got to this point. Because obviously when you're playing, you're using a tremendous facility, a tremendous ear for harmonics, and years of dedication and commitment to this.
You see, it's just like, say, it's obvious now that jazz is the most central and important thing in my life. Yet, I never knew that. I was involved with jazz, but, you know, I went to college, I got a teacher's degree because I thought I might teach. But when the moment came, bang, I went out into jazz. It was like, it was so much a part of my inner life, and I didn't realize it. There was no, it's like you ask a kid, what do you want to be when you grow up? Well, I would have said anything because I didn't really know, and I don't think many children do. But I just became so involved with jazz that that was the natural road, and it just pulled me here and pulled me there, and finally it revealed itself as the most important thing in my life. I started studying piano when I was 6, but this was classical music. Now, from the age of 6 to 13, I acquired the ability to sight read and to play classical music. So that actually, both of us, as you know, were performing Mozart, Beethoven, Schubert, and so on, intelligently, musically. But yet I couldn't play My Country 'Tis of Thee without the notes. Now, this is the funny thing, to be able to play a masterpiece intelligently and musically, and still not to be able to be creative and understand music enough to be able to play a simple thing like My Country 'Tis of Thee without having the music in front of me. So when I first joined that rehearsal band that you were already with, remember Tony Martin? I read the stock arrangements exactly as written, you know, chunk, 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 and once in a while they'd have a bell tone in the third chorus, you know, ding, and I'd wait for that, you know, because I had a little something. Well, one night I got real adventurous on Tuxedo Junction, and I put in a little, you know, that wasn't written, and this was such an experience to make music that wasn't indicated, you know. That really got me into starting to want to think about how to make the music. So, of course, I learned mostly on the job, you know, and then I started to learn about changes and harmonics and how a tune was built harmonically, so that I could remember the harmony and be able to play without music and be able to substitute one harmony for another or to change the harmonies and so on. Now, the whole process of learning the facility of being able to play jazz is to take these problems from the outer level in, one by one, and to stay with it at a very intense conscious concentration level until that process becomes secondary and subconscious. Now, when that becomes subconscious, then you can begin concentrating on that next problem, which will allow you to do a little bit more, you know, and so on and so on. And this is what happened, of course. But really, it wasn't until perhaps I started playing professionally when I was 13 and played at home and maybe 4 or 5 nights a week and as much as possible for all these years. And it wasn't until I'd say maybe I was 28 or something like that that I began to feel a degree of expressive ability, the ability to now let out my feelings freely through some sort of a craft, and this was in this simple area of the popular, you know, idiom.
But it is marvelous to see you get involved so quickly, you know. It doesn't take an hour of getting ready or preparing or getting in the mood or anything. It could be 2 o'clock in the morning, it could be 8 o'clock in the morning, it could be at noon. Professional discipline.
Sure, you just learn to throw that switch in. As a matter of fact, there's plenty of times when you just feel like I can't possibly play, get up there and play, but as soon as you get up there and when the moment comes, you have that discipline. And there's a professional level of creativity that I can depend on and which is satisfactory for public performance always, and that I can depend on when I throw the switch. But those other high levels which happen just occasionally are really thrilling. You don't know when the heck they're going to come. I'm so happy with the trio I have now. We broke in and we worked about 5 weeks, and I knew that there was a potential here, and I didn't know what it was, and we finally got to San Francisco on our 6th week, I believe. And the 3rd and 4th night of the engagement, suddenly we just went into an area that was far and away above anything we'd touched. And it just proved everything to me about the potential of the group, and it was really a thrilling thing. But there's no way to try to do it. You can't try to recapture it. You know, all you can do is always look for it, and sometimes it happens. So that's how much really work it took for me. I don't consider myself as talented as many people. But in some ways that was an advantage because I didn't have a great facility immediately, so I had to be more analytical, and in a way this
forced you.
Yeah, it forced me to build something, you know, so that was good. But that might give you an idea of how the problem is approached and what degree of time and effort is necessary to make all of this subconscious so that you can then express yourself. And I would certainly say it's more than worth it, but I think most people just don't realize the immensity of the problem, and either because they can't conquer it immediately think that they haven't got the ability, or they're so impatient to conquer it that they never do see it through. But if you do understand the problem, I think then you can enjoy your whole trip through. I know I feel like I've been tremendously fortunate in finding the position that I now have.
Yeah.
And yet, I can remember coming to New York to make or break, you know, in jazz, and saying to myself, now how should I attack this practical problem of becoming a jazz musician as making a living and so on. And I said, well, ultimately I came to the conclusion that all I must do is take care of the music, even if I do it in a closet. See? And if I really do that, somebody's going to come and open the door of the closet and say, hey, we're looking for you, you know.
Yeah.
And this is the way I really approached the whole thing. I never tried really to push
Most
doors.
of us, though, don't have this type of approach, you know. Our approach is, I have to do this and be accepted. So many of us are inclined to work and live for something else rather than the thing we're doing.
I had those things going too, but I mean, I always tried to discipline myself to you know, shut them out and all that. But really, I felt that otherwise, see, if I spread myself all over the place, I would have lost sight of everything. It's like you say, isn't it terrible that there's a war here and starvation there and poverty here? Now, what am I going to do as a human being about this whole thing, you know?
Yeah.
Well, gosh, if you try to accept every problem, you're just going to go insane.
Yeah.
So you have to choose some field in which you operate at your best capacity and which will then serve as an influence to deter all these other things that you know that you're worrying about. So I figure, like, if I take care of the music as best I can with my truest beliefs, then all these other things will be affected as I desire them to be affected, as much as I can affect them.
Can jazz be taught? Very good question, I guess. Well, on one level, you can teach appreciation, understanding, in the same way that you can teach people to appreciate or understand painting. And then, obviously, on another level, you can teach mechanics, technique, method, the process of jazz. I don't know if you can ever, you know, really get it into somebody's soul by just telling them about it, but maybe that's part of the process of their getting to feel it. In any event, here is Bill now explaining his theory of education.
When you begin to teach jazz, the most dangerous thing is that you tend to teach style. Now, I had 11 students. The one time I attempted to teach was at Lenox at the jazz school they had at Lenox at Music Inn in the Berkshires. And I had 11 piano students, and I would say 8 of them didn't even want to know about chords or anything. They didn't want to do anything that anybody had ever done because they didn't want to be imitators, you know. Well, of course, this is pretty naive and an attempt to circumvent great problems in music. But nevertheless, it does bring to light the fact that if you're going to try to teach jazz, you must try to teach principles which are separate from style. You must abstract the principles of music which have nothing to do with style, and this is exceedingly difficult. So their teaching of jazz is a very touchy point. It ends up where the jazz player ultimately, if he's going to be a serious jazz player, teaches himself. But the thing is that the jazz player, I think, ultimately must select and discard according to his own
Oh, I agree with you there.
Yeah,
I have one comment.
you know.
You'd be a tough student.
Believe me, I had them.
Most of us, certainly put myself in that category, is that we need someone to feed in procedures and approaches and tools and mechanics of doing things. Then we can depart, you know.
Well, I needed that too, Harry. And I mean, but the only thing is, you as an individual always make the decision of what you accept and what you reject. And I know you must have done the same thing. And I mean, that's the thing that you as an artist are really concerned with, is how are you handling your materials? Are you able to handle them in any way you want? And the
yeah.
mood is something else.
Oh, I think you're right, but I think we have to give them the materials.
Well,
You know, in other words, like, the first question always is, well, I can't stay on the F chord for 4 measures. What am I going to do? You see? All right, you can give them 4 avenues, 8 avenues, 12 avenues, you know, and say, well...
Or you can say find an avenue.
Or you can say find an avenue. But if you just say, well, find an avenue, you'd be fired as a teacher, you know? I mean, you just can't say find an avenue because we'll say, well, he's not teaching me anything.
Well, maybe that's the way to teach, though. Maybe if you say, well, you must find an avenue. The next week I'll show you an avenue, but this week find an avenue.
Oh, well, that way, yeah. You know, and the essence of teaching is to get the student excited about the subject and explore it on his own.
Right.
This is the essence of teaching.
Well, remember what went on between us in a way? In other words, because I felt that in order to motivate yourself further, you should discover things yourself. Right. And it's the same way with a student. If you give him too much, you take his motivation away because he hasn't discovered anything.
Oh, true.
Right?
This is the knack of a good teacher. The pulse is to know when to feed in and when to draw back to a student. And I'll never forget that visit when you came down to my home in Louisiana, and I waited for you for 3 years. I hadn't seen you in 3 years, and told musicians in town, I said, well, Bill's coming down. Boy, am I going to learn this week. And you came down and spent a week with me, and I said, Bill, show me those changes, harmonics, you know? And this went on for 3 days, and you didn't move from the couch to show me. And about the 4th day, I said, Bill, will you please show me, you know? And you walked over to the piano and say, well, if you really want, I don't want to deprive you of the pleasure of finding this out for yourself, and for that reason, I'm not going to show you a thing. And if you sit at the keyboard and get into it yourself, it'll be a marvelous experience. But if I can show you in 2 minutes what I've done. And I think you're right, because 8 years ago when we were together, you did show me some changes when we were at Berkshire together. Yeah. And you showed me some changes, and I'm using those changes today.
Right.
I still use
tricks
them.
or something.
And they're tricks, yeah. And I think you're so right here that I can't get the joy out of playing this as I can something I've developed myself. Sure. Certainly an area that the jazz musician is moving into, at least he's moving into now to the public eye, is in the area of composition, composing his own tunes. And of course there's a big area here, soundtracks for television shows and movies and so on. But I think here, Bill, the jazz musician is mostly concerned with building a framework for himself, too. He likes to develop his own tunes as vehicles to improvise. Mm-hmm. And I know you with your trio have been playing a lot of your tunes that you've composed. I know very much we'd all like to hear some of your tunes. Maybe you could just play the tune rather than improvise. You just play the framework, in other words, in which you work using these tunes.
All right. Well, I suppose I do 2 or 3 of them. Say Very Early, which is kind of a waltz, pretty kind of waltz, and I'll do that, and then go into a tune I call Time Remembered, which we use as a vehicle also with the trio. And from that I'll go into another theme that I call My Bells.
Yeah. Okay? Yeah, My Bells.